The millionaire was suspicious of his son's caregiver. He followed her and caught something he never imagined he would see. She was in a dark place, doing something secret. What he discovered changed his life and made him burst in tears. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you are watching us. We continue. The first rays of sunlight were already illuminating the avenue when Bruno Anderson left his penthouse apartment in the most exclusive area of the capital. The businessman, owner of one of the largest construction companies in the country, adjusted his Italian tie as the private elevator descended the 45 floors of the building where he lived. At 42 years old, Bruno was the picture of success. The son of immigrants who started from scratch, he had transformed his father's small construction business into an empire that built skyscrapers all over Brazil. The driver was already waiting for him with the door of the black Porsche open. Bruno got into the vehicle without taking his eyes off his cell phone, responding to important messages before even arriving at the office. The chaotic traffic in the capital didn't bother him. It was just more productive time to respond to emails and make calls. "Good morning, Dr. Bruno. Do you want to stop by the office first or go straight to the meeting?" asked Julian, his driver for over 10 years. "Straight to the meeting. I have a video conference with Chinese investors at 9 and I can't be late," Bruno replied, without taking his eyes off the smartphone screen. What few people knew about Bruno was that, behind that facade of a ruthless businessman, there was an absent father. In his luxurious apartment, little Lucas, just 8 years old, woke up alone once again, being welcomed only by the housekeeper, Donna Celia, who had been taking care of the house for years. Lucas was a bright-eyed, intelligent boy who had inherited his father's cunning, but carried the sweetness of his mother, Elisa, who had left for Paris 3 years earlier after a turbulent divorce. The separation had left deep scars on Bruno, who immersed himself even more in his work, as if each new real estate venture could fill the void he felt. "Has Daddy left yet, Donna Celia?" asked the boy as he ate the breakfast prepared by the housekeeper. "He left early, my dear. He said he had important meetings all day," replied the 62-year-old woman, feeling sorry for the boy's situation. "He promised he would take me to the Corinthians game on Sunday," commented Lucas, with a hope that Donna Celia knew was too fragile. "Let's hope he doesn't forget this time," she said, trying to keep the child's anticipation alive. At the headquarters of Anderson Incorporações, located on the 30th floor of an imposing mirrored building, Bruno led the meeting with determination. His team of executives admired and feared him in equal measure. No one dared to contradict his decisions or question his strategies. The resounding success of the last few years gave Bruno the conviction that his path was the right one. "Our latest project sold 80% of the units in the planning stage. The profit will be 30% above the projected amount," announced Paula Meinhard, the company's financial director, causing smiles of satisfaction around the table. "Great, but I want 100% by the end of the quarter. Step up marketing efforts and offer special conditions to investors who have already purchased from us before," Bruno said, typing notes on his tablet. The morning passed quickly between meetings and important decisions. During lunch break, Bruno received an unexpected call from Lucas's school. "Mr. Anderson, this is Mirella, coordinator of the Horizonte School. We need you to come to a meeting later this week. It's about Lucas." "Did something happen?" he asked, feeling a rare moment of concern. "Lucas is doing well physically, but we have observed behaviors that concern us. He has been isolating himself during breaks and his participation in class has decreased considerably." Bruno sighed, looking at his busy schedule on the computer screen. "Can I send my secretary?" "Mr. Anderson, with all due respect, we need the father's presence. This is about your son's emotional development." The words fell like stones on Bruno. Deep down, he knew he was failing as a father, but he convinced himself that his professional success would make up for it. After all, he was building an empire for Lucas to inherit. "Thursday, 5 p.m., that's the only time I have," he replied curtly. "Noted. We are waiting for you, sir." "Thank you." The afternoon continued as normal, but the call from school disturbed Bruno's thoughts. At the end of the day, when he returned to the apartment, it was already past 10 p.m. He found Donna Celia waiting for him in the living room. "Good evening, Dr. Breno. Lucas waited for you until 9 o'clock but ended up falling asleep. He drew a picture at school today and really wanted to show it to you." Breno nodded, taking the paper that the governess held out. In the colored drawing, Lucas had portrayed a family. He, small, next to a large figure holding his hand, certainly representing Breno. What caught his attention the most, however, was the female figure on the other side holding the boy's other hand. "Did he say this is his mother?" Breno asked, indicating the female figure. "No, sir. He said she's the tutor who started helping him last week. He seems to really like her." Breno frowned. He didn't remember authorizing extra classes for Lucas. "What, teacher? I didn't hire anyone." "It was the school, sir. Lucas was having trouble with math, and they referred him to a teacher who gives private lessons. She started coming here 3 times a week. I thought you were aware." "And who authorized this?" asked Breno, irritated by the situation. "You signed the authorization 2 weeks ago. It came with other school documents that I left on your desk." Breno vaguely remembered signing a stack of papers without reading them, between one meeting and another. It was typical of him to delegate matters related to Lucas to Donna Celia. "What is this teacher's name?" "Daniela Cavalcanti. A very polite and attentive girl. Lucas loves classes with her." Breno thought for a moment. If the school had recommended it and Lucas was enjoying it, maybe it wouldn't be a problem. In fact, it might even be convenient to have someone to help his son while he dedicated himself to his work. But something about the drawing bothered him. The way Lucas had depicted Daniela holding hands with him suggested an emotional closeness that Breno rarely managed to establish with his own son. "Is she coming tomorrow?" he asked. "Yes, sir, at 3:00 p.m. I'm going to rearrange my schedule. I want to meet this teacher." Donna Celia nodded, surprised by Breno's sudden interest in his son's school matters. After the housekeeper left, Breno poured himself a glass of whiskey and walked to Lucas's room. He opened the door slowly and watched his son sleeping. The sow. Boy's chest rose and fell in a calm rhythm. On the study table, several organized books and notebooks with neat notes, something that was not common before. Breno woke up earlier than usual the next morning. For the first time in months, he made a point of having breakfast with Lucas, who couldn't hide his surprise when he saw his father sitting at the table. "Good morning, champion," said Breno, trying to sound natural, as if that scene were routine. "Good morning, Dad," Lucas replied with a shy smile, as Donna Celia served orange juice for both of them. "I heard you're taking classes with a private teacher," Breno commented, watching his son's reaction closely. Lucas's eyes lit up instantly. "Aunt Daniela. She's amazing, Dad. She teaches me math in a way that I understand everything. And you know what's coolest? She doesn't get mad when I make mistakes. She says that making mistakes is part of learning." Breno felt a pang of jealousy. In such a short time, this woman had earned the admiration he so desperately sought from his son. "And what else do you do during class?" "She brings math games, and sometimes we do experiments. Yesterday we made volcanoes out of baking soda and vinegar to study chemical reactions," exclaimed Lucas, excited. "Interesting," Breno murmured. "I'll meet her today." "Will you be home when she gets here?" Lucas asked in disbelief. "I'll work from here this afternoon," Breno replied, not mentioning that he had cancelled 3 important meetings to do so. After dropping Lucas off at school, Breno headed to the office, but he couldn't concentrate. Something about the situation bothered him deeply. Why hadn't the school discussed hiring the teacher directly with him? Why did Lucas draw this woman as part of the family? During lunch, Breno asked his assistant to discreetly investigate Daniela Cavalcanti's professional background. A quick search revealed that she had a degree in education from USP, with a specialization in psychopedagogy, and 5 years of experience in elite private schools. Apparently, there was nothing suspicious on her resume. At 2:30 p.m., Breno was already home, anxiously awaiting the teacher's arrival. Sitting in his office, he reviewed contracts while keeping an eye on the security camera at the entrance to the building. At 2:55 p.m., the doorman announced the arrival of Daniela Cavalcanti. When the doorbell rang, it was Breno who answered the door, not Donna Celia as usual. The woman in front of him looked to be around 30 years old, with curly hair tied in an unpretentious bun, red-framed glasses and a sincere smile. She was wearing jeans, a simple white shirt, and carrying a worn leather bag full of books and school supplies. "Good afternoon. You must be Mr. Anderson. I'm Daniela Cavalcanti, Lucas's teacher," she introduced herself, extending her hand. "Breno Anderson," he replied, shaking her hand firmly. "Please come in." There was something disconcertingly authentic about Daniela. She didn't show the nervousness or flattery that Breno was used to provoking in people. On the contrary, her gaze was direct and confident. "Lucas should be home from school soon. In the meantime, I'd like to talk about his progress," Breno said, leading her into the living room. "Of course," Daniela replied, sitting down on the couch and taking a notebook out of her bag. "Lucas is a brilliant boy, you know. He has an incredible ability to make connections between different subjects. The problem isn't a lack of intelligence, it's a lack of confidence." "Trust?" Breno asked, surprised. "Yes. He's afraid of making mistakes, of disappointing others. It's something common in children who feel a great responsibility on their shoulders," she explained, with a look that seemed to analyze not only Lucas, but also the father in front of her. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the boy, who ran in when he saw Daniela and stopped in surprise when he also found his father. "Dad, you're really here?" Lucas exclaimed, running to hug him. "As I promised, champion," Breno replied, feeling a tightness in his chest as he realized how unusual it was to keep a simple promise like that. For the next 2 hours, Breno observed the interaction between Daniela and Lucas. The teacher had a special way of teaching, turning math problems into fun challenges. Even more impressive was how she valued every little bit of progress Lucas made, celebrating his achievements and turning his mistakes into learning opportunities. When class ended, Lucas asked to show Daniela his new video game console in his room. Breno took the opportunity to look at the material she had left on the table. Among the textbooks and educational games, he found a notebook with detailed notes on Lucas's progress, observations of his behavior, and personalized teaching strategies. A loose sheet of paper caught his eye. It was a pamphlet about a charity event for underprivileged children in the eastern part of the capital. The event, titled Education for All, would be held the following weekend. Turning over the paper, he found handwritten notes, company, names, amounts, and a list of necessary school supplies. "Sorry for the delay," Daniela said, returning to the room. "Lucas really wanted to show you the game he won." Breno quickly replaced the pamphlet among the materials. "No problem. I see you're really helping Lucas. He seems more confident." "He's a wonderful boy. He just needs attention and encouragement," she replied, starting to pack up her materials. "I saw you're involved in a social project," Breno commented casually, indicating the pamphlet. Daniela hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much to share. "Yes, I work on an educational project in the east side of town. I teach children who don't have access to quality education." "Interesting. Do you teach at a private school during the day and volunteer on the weekends?" "Actually, my main job is the social project," she explained. "I give private lessons to supplement my income and finance our initiatives." Breno frowned, puzzled. A teacher with Daniela's resume could easily land a well-paying job at any elite school in the capital. Why choose a life of financial hardship to help children she didn't even know? "And how did this interest in social work come about?" he asked. "It's a long story," Daniela replied with an enigmatic smile, closing her bag. "But I believe that all knowledge should be shared, not kept for a privileged few." There was something in her tone of voice that sounded like a veiled criticism of the world Breno lived in, a world of privilege and exclusivity. It irritated and fascinated him at the same time. "Well, I'm glad Lucas is making progress," he said, standing up. "We'll continue with the lessons." "Great. See you on Wednesday then," Daniela replied, saying goodbye. After she left, Breno was left thoughtful. There was something about the teacher that didn't fit. Her simplicity and dedication seemed too authentic for the cynical world he lived in. Or maybe there was something more behind that facade of a dedicated educator. That night, as he put Lucas to bed, something he rarely did, Breno casually asked, "Son, does Professor Daniela talk about her work with other children?" "Yes. She has a school for poor children," Lucas replied enthusiastically. "She showed me pictures of her students there. They don't have video games or tablets, but Aunt Daniela makes board games for them to learn math. One day I want to visit her school and take my games to donate." Breno felt a mixture of admiration and distrust. Why would Daniela be sharing details of her social work with Lucas? Was it just innocent conversation, or was there some intention behind it? And does she talk about her life? Where does she live? Is she married? "She lives in a small apartment near the Santana subway station. She's not married, but she has a dog named Galileo," Lucas replied, yawning. "Dad, can I go to Aunt Daniela's school one day?" "We'll see, son. Now sleep," Breno said, kissing the boy's forehead. As he left the room, Breno made a decision. He needed to find out who Daniela Cavalcanti really was and what her true intentions were in approaching Lucas. There was something about that simple and determined woman that deeply disturbed him. On Saturday morning, Breno cancelled his golf outing, something that would have been unthinkable a few weeks ago. He dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, clothes he rarely wore, and put on a cap so as not to be easily recognized. He left Lucas in the care of Donna Celia, with the excuse that he had to take care of urgent matters at the office. "Are you going to work today too, Dr. Breno?" asked the housekeeper, visibly worried about his exhausting routine. "Some problems have come up, Celia. Don't worry, I won't be long," he lied, avoiding Lucas's disappointed look, who was hoping to spend Saturday with his father. Breno drove his own car, a discreet Audi that he rarely used, to the Santana neighborhood in the northern part of the capital. According to the information he had obtained from a private investigator who had been hastily hired on Friday, Daniela lived in a simple building on Rua dos Volunteers, a few meters from the subway station. He parked a few blocks away and walked to a cafe overlooking the building's entrance. He ordered an espresso and waited patiently, feeling ridiculously out of place in this middle-class neighborhood. Ordinary people hurried past, carrying grocery bags or walking their dogs. It was a completely different world from the penthouses and luxury condos where Breno roamed. After waiting for almost an hour, Daniela finally left the building. She was wearing jeans, a white t-shirt, and a light jacket. Her curly hair was loose, unlike the bun she wore during class. She was carrying a large bag and walking with determined steps toward the subway. Breno quickly paid the bill and followed her at a safe distance. On the subway, he got on the same train as her, hiding behind a newspaper. Daniela got off at Belém station, in the east of the city, and walked along streets that were increasingly unfamiliar to Breno. The businessman rarely visited that area except to evaluate land for possible developments. After a few minutes of walking, Daniela entered an old building with a faded sign that said, Aurora Community Center. Breno waited a few minutes before approaching. Through the window, he saw a large room where about 20 children of different ages were sitting in a circle, with Daniela in the center handing out materials. He sneaked into the building and followed a side corridor where he could observe, without being noticed. The place was simple but clean and organized. On the walls were colorful drawings and posters with motivational phrases. On a wall there were photos of smiling children doing different activities, planting in a vegetable garden, presenting projects, receiving certificates. Daniela spoke enthusiastically, and even from a distance, Breno could see the children's undivided attention. She handed out books and began what seemed like a Portuguese class, but with such a different approach that the children participated as if they were playing a game. "Aunt Daniela, can I read the next paragraph?" asked a skinny boy, raising his hand eagerly. "Of course, Tiago. Remember to respect the punctuation as we discussed," she replied with an encouraging smile. Breno watched for nearly an hour, fascinated by the transformation he saw in Daniela. In his home, she was competent and focused. Here she radiated passion and purpose. The children adored her. It was evident in the way they addressed her, the way they sought her approval. When class ended, Daniela handed out snacks from her own bag. Breno noticed that she had brought fruit, sandwiches and juice for all the children. As a private tutor, she certainly didn't earn enough to support this project on her own. An older woman, appearing to be around 60 years old, approached Daniela. While the children were having lunch, "Daniela, dear, I need to talk to you about the rent situation," the lady said, her voice worried. "Mrs. Ingrid, I know we're late, but I promise I'll have the money by the end of the week," Daniela replied, lowering her voice. "I'm giving more private lessons, and the money from the sale of my books should arrive on Tuesday." "Girl, you've already sold almost all your law books. You can't go on like this. The owner is threatening to close the center if we don't pay the 3 months arrears." "Law?" Breno frowned, intrigued. "So Daniela had a degree in law as well as pedagogy?" "Don't worry, Mrs. Ingrid. I have a plan for next weekend's charity event. If we can get the sponsors I'm contacting, we'll not only be able to pay the rent but also renovate the bathroom and buy the teaching materials we need." The conversation was interrupted when one of the children approached Daniela to show her a drawing he had made. Breno took the opportunity to discreetly leave the building, his head buzzing with questions. Instead of going home, she decided to wait. She stood in a bakery across the street, from where she could see the entrance to the community center. 2 hours later, Daniela came out accompanied by a group of teenagers. They walked together for a few blocks until they reached a square where other young people were waiting for them. Breno followed at a safe distance, intrigued by the new situation. In the center of the square, Daniela organized what seemed to be a small event. The teenagers set up a table with colorful posters and began handing out flyers to passers-by. From his vantage point, Breno could read the words on one of the posters: "Education is everyone's right. No to the closing of public schools in the outskirts." It was a political act, Breno realized. Daniela was guiding the young people in some kind of social mobilization. She seemed to have experience in this by the way she instructed the teenagers on how to approach people, how to explain the cause, how to collect signatures for a petition. One of the young men, no older than 16, picked up a megaphone and began to speak with surprising eloquence about the importance of education as a tool for social transformation. Breno noticed Daniela's proud look as she watched her pupil. "That lady over there is a lawyer, you know," commented a man next to Breno in the bakery, noticing his interest in the group. "She defended the community when they tried to expropriate the land in the Jardim Principal favela to build a luxury condominium." Breno swallowed hard. Anderson Incorporações had been one of the companies interested in that land. The project was abandoned after strong resistance from the community and a legal battle that dragged on for months. "Is she a lawyer?" he asked, feigning casual interest. She was, a good one. She worked in a famous office. She earned a good salary. She left everything to dedicate herself to these children. It's a shame that her community center is about to close due to lack of money. Those rich real estate agents don't spare a cent of rent, even though they know the important work that is done there. Breno nodded, feeling uncomfortably exposed. As if the man could somehow know who he was, he paid for his coffee and quickly left the bakery. On the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about everything I had discovered. Daniela Cavalcanti wasn't just a private tutor. She was a former lawyer who had given up a promising career to dedicate herself to social causes, someone who sold her own books to keep a community center running, who fed underprivileged children with her own money, who taught young people to fight for their rights. But why was she teaching Lucas? Was it just for the money to fund her social project, or was there some other reason? The coincidence that she had fought against a project that involved her company was too disturbing to ignore. When he arrived home, he found Lucas playing video games in the living room. "Dad, you're back. Can we play together now?" the boy asked hopefully. Breno looked at his son, feeling a strange mix of guilt and determination. "Sure, champ. I'm just going to take a quick shower and come back to play with you." In the shower, the hot water fell on his tense shoulders as he tried to gather his thoughts. He needed to find out more about Daniela Cavalcanti. He needed to understand her true intentions, and most of all, he needed to protect his son from anyone who tried to get close to him with ulterior motives. On Monday, Breno decided to skip the important meeting with investors and follow Daniela again, this time to a law office in the city centre. She hurried in and left half an hour later with a frustrated expression on her face. From there, she went to a private school in the South Zone, where she taught 2 different students. At the end of the day, when Daniela returned to her apartment in Santana, Breno watched the building from afar, thinking about the contrast between her life and his own. She lived in a simple apartment, used public transportation, and worked tirelessly for a cause she believed in. He, on the other hand, accumulated properties, collected luxury cars, and spent his days in meetings whose sole purpose was to increase his fortune even further. On Wednesday, Breno decided to stay home during Daniela's class with Lucas. He observed their interaction with fresh eyes, searching for signs of any hidden agenda. But all he saw was a dedicated teacher and a boy blossoming under her guidance. "Mr. Anderson, can I talk to you before I leave?" Daniela asked at the end of class while Lucas put away his materials. "Sure," Breno replied, leading her to his office. Once alone, Daniela got straight to the point. "I'm organizing a charity event to raise funds for the Aurora Community Center. I know you're an influential businessman, and I was wondering if you could help us with a donation or perhaps as a sponsor." Breno kept a neutral expression, while internally wondering if she knew he had followed her. "What kind of community center is this?" "We serve around 50 children and teenagers from the east side of the city. We offer tutoring, cultural workshops, and professional guidance. Unfortunately, we are experiencing financial difficulties and are at risk of closing our doors." "And what is your relationship with this center?" "I'm the founder and coordinator," she replied simply. "It was a dream I realized 3 years ago after leaving my career as a lawyer." "Interesting. Why would a successful lawyer give up her career to open a community center?" Breno asked, trying to provoke a reaction. Daniela studied him for a moment as if deciding how much to reveal. "I realized I could do more for people by teaching them to fight for their rights than by representing them in court, especially children, who are the future." His answer seemed sincere, but Breno still felt there was something more. "I will think about your request. Can you send me detailed information about the project?" "Of course," Daniela replied, pulling a folder with documents from her bag. "Here are our projects, results, and current needs. I've also included an invitation to the charity event on Sunday. It would be an honor to have you there, and Lucas would also be very welcome." After Daniela left, Breno looked over the documents. The community center seemed legitimate, with detailed activity reports and testimonials from families who had benefited. But he still couldn't shake the feeling that there was some connection between Daniela's work and her interest in teaching Lucas. On Thursday, during the meeting at school, Breno questioned the coordinator about Daniela's recommendation as a private teacher. "Ms. Cavalcanti has been highly recommended by other families," explained Mirella, the coordinator. "She has a unique approach that works especially well with children who, like Lucas, are intellectually capable but emotionally reserved." "And did you do a background check?" "Of course, Mr. Anderson. Our protocols are rigorous. Ms. Cavalcanti has excellent references and her track record is impeccable." Despite the assurances, Breno could not shake his suspicions. That night, he made a decision that he knew was questionable. He would take advantage of Daniela's next class to investigate her belongings. The opportunity arose on Friday. During class, Daniela had to take an urgent call and left her bag on the living room couch as she went out into the hallway. Breno, who was pretending to be working on his laptop at the other end of the room, silently approached and rummaged through her bag. Among the books, notebooks, and teaching materials, he found a small green-covered diary. He hesitated for a moment, his conscience protesting against the invasion of his privacy, but his curiosity got the better of him. He picked up the diary and quickly returned to his place, hiding it among his documents. When Daniela returned, she apologized for the interruption and continued the class as if nothing had happened. Breno watched her with a mixture of guilt and anticipation, eager to find out what that diary would reveal. It was only late at night, locked in his office, that Breno finally opened the diary. The first pages contained personal reflections on education, quotes from Paulo Freire and notes on pedagogical strategies. But as he progressed, the content changed in tone. March 15th. Today marks 1 year since I left the Mendes and Associados law firm. 1 year since I decided that I could no longer be complicit in a system that favors the rich and powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. Jorge still calls me occasionally, offering a triumphant return, but my decision is made. The community. Center is where I can truly make a difference. Breno frowned. Mendes and Associados was one of the law firms that provided services to Anderson Incorporações. The connection was closer than he had imagined. She kept reading, each page revealing more of Daniela's personal journey. She wrote about her financial struggles, about the sleepless nights she spent worrying about the rent for the center, about the joy she felt when she saw the progress of the children she helped. It was the portrait of someone genuinely dedicated to a cause. Then an entry from 2 months ago caught his eye. March 20th. I received an offer to give private lessons to Breno Anderson's son. Yes, the same Anderson from the developer who tried to expropriate Jardim Principal. The irony is not lost on me. Part of me wants to refuse on principle, but another part sees an opportunity. The cost of the lessons would pay for 3 months' rent for the center. Besides, maybe it's a chance to show someone from that privileged world that there is reality beyond penthouses and imported cars. The boy is not to blame for his father's actions. After all, Breno felt his stomach sink, so that was it. Daniela had agreed to teach Lucas out of financial necessity and perhaps for some kind of personal mission. He continued reading, growing more and more anxious. March 27th, first class with Lucas Anderson today. What a brilliant and sensitive child. So different from what I expected from the son of a real estate magnate. His eyes have a sadness that belies his age. He told me that his father is always busy and rarely plays or talks to him. My heart sank. Material wealth and emotional poverty, a combination as common as it is tragic. The following pages detailed Lucas's lessons, the boys' progress, and Daniela's observations of his family life. There was nothing malicious in her words, just genuine concern for the child's emotional well-being. April 15th. Lucas asked me today about my work at the community center. His eyes lit up when I told him about the kids there, the books we share, the garden we plant together. Are they happy without expensive video games? He asked with genuine curiosity. They're happy because they have each other, because they feel part of something bigger, I replied. I saw something awaken in him, a seed of social awareness that I hoped to nurture. Breno felt a lump in his throat. Daniela wasn't trying to manipulate his son against him. She was simply sharing her reality, answering a child's curious questions. Even so, he felt exposed, judged. The most recent entry, from just a week ago, made her heart race. May 10th. The community center. Toys about to close. The landlord has given us an ultimatum. Either we pay the back rent by the end of the month, or he will evict the children. I have sold almost everything I can sell. Private lessons are not enough. My last resort is the fundraiser, but without significant sponsors, we will not be able to raise enough. I thought about approaching Breno Anderson directly. It would be an irony of fate if the man whose projects have threatened so many vulnerable communities were now the savior of one of them. But I have no illusions. Men like him do not change. They do not see beyond their own interests. Still, for the sake of those children, I am willing to swallow my pride and ask for his help. Daniela's words hit him like a punch. That was how she saw him. A cold, self-interested man, incapable of seeing beyond his own benefits. The worst part was that, looking at his life, his choices, he couldn't completely deny that image. He closed the diary, suddenly feeling exhausted. The night was drawing on, and with it, a growing restlessness. He had found the answers he sought, but they brought more questions, not about Daniela, but about himself. He got up and walked to Lucas's room. The boy was sleeping peacefully, hugging an old teddy bear. Breno sat on the edge of the bed watching his son. When was the last time he really looked at Lucas, really saw him? On Saturday morning, Breno woke up with a decision made. He called his driver and asked him to take him to Daniela's apartment in Santana. He needed to return the diary before the next class, and more than that, he needed to confront his own confused feelings about everything he had discovered. When Daniela opened the door, her surprise was evident. "Mr. Anderson? Did something happen to Lucas?" "No, Lucas is fine. Can I come in? We need to talk." The small apartment was exactly as Breno had imagined, simple, organized, with shelves full of books and walls decorated with children's drawings. In a corner of the room, a mongrel dog raised its head, curious about the visitor. "This is Galileo," Daniela introduced, as the dog approached to sniff Breno. "He usually doesn't like strangers, but he seems to approve of you." Breno sat on the simple sofa in Daniela's living room, feeling out of place in his impeccably tailored Italian suit. Galileo, the mongrel dog, lay at his feet as if they were old friends. "Would you like some coffee?" Daniela offered, visibly intrigued by the unexpected visit. "Yes, thank you," Breno replied, taking time to organize his thoughts. While Daniela prepared coffee in the small American kitchen, Breno observed the room. On the walls, in addition to children's drawings, there were framed photographs. Daniela with groups of smiling children, Daniela receiving a diploma, Daniela at a demonstration holding a poster about the right to education. A life completely dedicated to a cause. "Here you go," she said, returning with 2 plain cups. "Sorry I don't have any sugar. I ran out yesterday and I haven't been able to get to the store yet." Breno accepted the bitter coffee, feeling that somehow that flavor suited the moment. He took a deep breath and took the diary out of his jacket's inside pocket. "This belongs to you," he said, holding out the small green notebook. Daniela's eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed in understanding. "You read my diary," she stated, not as a question, but as a fact. "Yes," Breno admitted, deciding there was no point in denying it. "It was an unforgivable invasion of privacy, I know, but I was concerned about your intentions toward my son." Daniela picked up the diary, her fingers caressing the worn cover as if checking to make sure the object was intact. When she spoke, her voice was low but firm. "What did you think you were going to find? Some evil plan to kidnap your son? Or perhaps a scheme to extort money from the powerful Breno Anderson?" There was bitterness in her words, but also something more complex, a resigned sadness, as if Breno's attitude only confirmed a worldview she already carried. "I don't know what I expected to find," he replied honestly, "but I know what I found. A woman passionate about a cause, fighting against all odds to keep a dream alive, and a very critical view of me." Daniela sighed, placing the diary on the coffee table. "My words about you were based on assumptions and the public image you project. It was unfair to judge without knowing." "Was it necessary?" Breno asked, surprised at his own vulnerability. "The things you wrote about me, the man who only cares about profits, who neglects his own son in the name of success, those were pretty accurate observations." An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Galileo, sensing the tension, approached Daniela, who absently stroked his ears. "Why did you come here, Mr. Anderson?" she asked finally. "To return the diary, of course, but you could have done that next class. What do you really want?" Breno considered the question. What did he really want? Not even he knew for sure. Maybe answers, maybe redemption, maybe just to better understand this woman who had awakened something different inside him. "I want to see your community center," he replied, surprising them both. "I want to see for myself the work you do there. And I want to take Lucas with me." Daniela studied him, looking for signs of a trap or ulterior motives. "Why?" "Because he asked. Because he cares about what you do. And because maybe it's time to show him that there's a world beyond our concrete and glass walls." A small smile appeared on Daniela's lips. "Well, we're open this afternoon. The kids would love to meet Lucas. And as for you, maybe it'll be educational." There was a veiled challenge in his words, and Breno felt a curious urge to accept it. "I'll pick up Lucas, and we'll be there at 2. When Breno left Daniela's apartment, he felt strangely light, as if he had left behind something heavy that he didn't even know he was carrying. In the car, he called Donna Celia, asking her to prepare Lucas for a special outing. At noon, father and son had lunch together at a simple restaurant, something new for both of them, who were used to gourmet meals prepared by Breno's private chef. "Where are we going next, Dad?" Lucas asked, his eyes shining with anticipation. "It's a surprise," Breno replied, smiling at his son's enthusiasm. "But it involves your teacher, Daniela, and the work she does when she's not teaching you." Lucas's eyes widened. "Shall we visit her school for video game-free kids?" "Exactly," Breno confirmed, noting how his son described the community center. Not as a place for poor kids or needy kids, but simply kids without video games, a distinction as innocent as it was revealing. At 2 o'clock sharp, Breno's Audi pulled up in front of the Aurora Community Center. The building, seen in daylight, looked even more modest than Breno remembered. The paint was peeling in spots, and one of the windows was patched with duct tape. Daniela was waiting for them at the entrance, wearing jeans and a community center t-shirt, her hair tied back in a casual ponytail. When she saw Lucas, her face lit up. "Lucas, I'm so glad you came," she exclaimed, bending down to the boy's level. "The kids are so excited to meet you. I told them you're great at math and can help with multiplication tables." Lucas smiled, proud to be recognized for his skills. "I brought some of my games to donate," he said, showing a bag he was carrying. Breno looked at his son in surprise. He had no idea about this plan. "Donna Celia helped me separate the ones I no longer use," explained Lucas, noticing his father's look. "That's very generous." "Lucas," Daniela praised, "I'm sure the kids will love it. Shall we go in?" The interior of the center was more organized than its facade suggested. The walls, painted in bright colors, displayed artwork and educational posters. A large room served as a multi-purpose space, with tables and chairs arranged in small groups. In another area, makeshift shelves formed a modest library. In the back was a community kitchen, where volunteers prepared snacks. "Welcome to Estrella da Manhã," Daniela introduced with evident pride. "We started 3 years ago, serving just 15 children. Today we serve more than 50 regularly, offering tutoring, cultural workshops, and 2 meals a day." As he spoke, children of different ages approached curiously, especially Lucas, who carried the bag of games like a treasure. "Guys, this is Lucas, a very special student who came to visit us today. And this is his father, Mr. Anderson," introduced Daniela. "Hi," Lucas greeted shyly, but was soon surrounded by a group of children eager to meet him and see what he had brought. Breno watched, fascinated, as his son, usually so reserved and shy in social settings, quickly integrated into the group. Within minutes, Lucas was sitting on the floor, explaining the rules of a board game to attentive, smiling children. "He has a natural gift for teaching," Daniela commented, watching the scene alongside Breno. "Like father, like son." "I don't have that gift," Breno replied with a sad smile. "Maybe I inherited it from my mother. Or maybe you've never had the chance to discover that side of yourself," she suggested. An elderly lady approached, the same one Breno had seen, talking to Daniela days before. "Daniela, dear, the snacks are almost ready. Oh, we have visitors," she exclaimed, noticing Breno. "Ms. Ingrid, this is Breno Anderson, father of Lucas, one of my private students," Daniela introduced. "Mr. Anderson, this is Ms. Ingrid, the true soul of this place. She was the one who initially gave us the space and helped us get the first volunteers." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Anderson," the lady said, shaking Breno's hand with surprising vigor. "Daniela speaks highly of your son. It's good to see parents interested in the social work we do here." Breno felt a pang of guilt. He was there out of curiosity, not genuine social interest, or at least that was how it had started. "The work you do is admirable," he replied sincerely. "How do you manage to keep it all going? Have you signed up yet? Do it now and tell us which city you're following us from." Donna Ingrid's smile faltered slightly. "With great difficulty, to be honest. We depend on donations, volunteer work, and most of all the stubbornness of this young lady here," she said, pointing at Daniela. "She puts every penny she earns into this place. She even sold her collection of law books to pay the rent last month." Daniela seemed uncomfortable with the mention of her financial difficulties. "Donna Ingrid is exaggerating. We are a team. Everyone contributes as they can." "But not everyone gives up a promising career at one of the capital's largest law firms to teach children to read," the woman countered with evident pride in the young woman. "She could be making a fortune defending businessmen like you, Mr. Anderson. Instead, she chose to defend those who cannot afford it." Breno looked at Daniela with growing admiration. "Why did you give up law?" he asked, curious to hear the story, directly from her, and not through the pages of her diary. Daniela hesitated, but when she saw the genuine interest in Breno's eyes, she decided to answer. "I realized I was on the wrong side of the counter. I worked on cases that, although legally correct, were not always morally just. The last straw was an expropriation process." "The main garden," Breno added, seeing the surprise in her eyes. "I read about it in your diary. It was one of my company's projects." "Yes," she confirmed, holding his gaze. "I was supposed to represent the interests of the developers, but the more I got to know the community, the more I realized I couldn't be a part of it. It wasn't just about houses being torn down, it was about lives being destroyed, dreams being buried under concrete and real estate speculation." Donna Ingrid, noticing the tension in the air, smiled kindly and walked away to supervise the distribution of snacks, leaving Breno and Daniela alone. "So that's how it all started?" Breno asked, unable to hide his curiosity. "You left a stable job at a prestigious firm because of a specific case." Daniela led him to a small wooden bench in the courtyard from where they could watch the children playing. Lucas was completely integrated into the group, explaining the rules of a card game to 3 boys his age. "It wasn't just one case," she explained, sitting down. "It was the culmination of years of questioning my choices. I went to law school dreaming of changing the world, of standing up for the underdog. I ended up defending the interests of the powerful against the weak. The main garden was just the moment when I could no longer ignore the contradiction." Breno nodded, understanding more than he cared to admit. "And the community center? How did it come about?" "After I left the office, I started volunteering here in the East Zone. I realized that many children were being left behind by the education system. Not for lack of capacity, but for lack of opportunity. Donna Ingrid had this underutilized space and offered me to start a small project. Over time, it grew. Until it became financially unsustainable," Breno added, remembering the diary entries. Daniela sighed. "That's the hardest part. When we started, we had support from some small businesses, regular donations. But with the economic crisis, donations decreased and costs only increased. Now, with the ultimatum from the property owner, what is the amount needed to regularize the situation?" Breno asked directly. Daniela looked at him with a mixture of pride and distrust. "I'm not asking for charity, Mr. Anderson." "Breno," he corrected, "and I'm not offering charity, I'm considering an investment." "Investment," she repeated, frowning. "That's not a business that generates financial profit." "There are different types of returns," Breno replied, surprised by his own words. "How much?" Daniela hesitated, then answered in a low voice. 80,000. 3 months' rent arrears, plus the urgent repairs we need to do to the roof and bathrooms." Breno nodded, doing mental calculations. It was less than he would spend on a weekend in Ibiza or a luxury watch. "I can transfer that amount today, but I have some conditions." Daniela's gaze hardened. "What kind of conditions?" "I want to participate in the charity event you are organizing, not just as a sponsor, but as an organizer. I have contacts that might be useful." Surprise replaced the distrust on Daniela's face. "Why? Why would you get personally involved in this?" Breno looked at Lucas, who was laughing openly with his new friends. "Because my son is happier and more excited here, among children who have nothing material to offer, than he ever was at the extravagant parties I organized for him." Daniela followed his gaze, watching Lucas for a moment. That doesn't answer my question, Breno. Why do you personally want to get involved? The question was too direct to be avoided with evasive answers. Breno felt he owed the truth, to himself and to her. Because I'm starting to realize that I've built an empire of concrete and glass, but I've forgotten to build what really matters. Connections, purpose, meaning. He paused, searching for the right words. And maybe by helping you with your project, I can start to rebuild my relationship with Lucas. Daniela studied him for a long time, as if evaluating the sincerity of his words. Okay, she finally agreed, but on one condition. You have to come here regularly. Not just send money. I want you to meet the children to really understand what we're doing. Deal, Breno replied, extending his hand. Daniela hesitated only a second before shaking it, sealing the deal. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. Breno found himself involved in the center's activities, first as an observer, then as a reluctant participant, and finally as an enthusiast. He helped organize an impromptu soccer match, where Lucas, to his surprise, demonstrated skills he had never known. He helped distribute snacks, feeling strangely gratified by the children's grateful smiles. And, most importantly, he watched his son flourish in an environment so different from his sheltered and privileged world. At the end of the day, when they were saying goodbye, a little girl with colorful braids approached Lucas timidly. "Are you coming back?" she asked, her eyes hopeful. Lucas looked at his father, a silent question in his eyes. Breno felt something warm in his chest. "Yes, we'll be back next Saturday," he replied, to the delight of his son and the girl. "And maybe we can bring more games." In the car on the way home, Lucas was unusually talkative. "Dad, did you see how good Maria is at math? She solved all the problems faster than me, and Carlos knows how to make amazing bracelets with thread. He taught me how to start one. Look." She proudly showed off a small, colorful braid on her wrist. "It's very beautiful, son," Breno replied, genuinely interested. "Did you have fun?" "That was the best day," Lucas exclaimed. "Can we really come back next Saturday? I promise I'll finish all my homework before then." "Yes, we can," Breno confirmed. "Actually, I was thinking that we could help Aunt Daniela with the charity event she's organizing. What do you think?" Lucas's eyes lit up. "Really? We can help the kids at the center?" "Yes, and I thought you could give me ideas on what to do. After all, you know their tastes better now." Lucas's smile lit up the car. Breno realized that in all his years of business success, he had never felt the satisfaction he felt at that moment, simply for having made his son smile. On Monday, Breno surprised his team by canceling an important meeting to attend Lucas's school reunion. Coordinator Mirella couldn't hide her shock when she saw him arrive on time. "Mr. Anderson, I'm so glad you could come," she said, ushering him into her office. "As I mentioned on the phone, we were concerned about Lucas's social isolation, but I must say that in the last few weeks, we've noticed a significant improvement." "I believe that classes with Miss Cavalcanti have helped," commented Breno. "Absolutely, her approach is exceptional, but that's not all," Mirella smiled. "Just today, Lucas came in all excited, telling me about a community center he visited with his father over the weekend. He said he made friends and that he's going back to help the children there." Breno felt a mixture of pride and shame. Pride for his son's enthusiasm, shame that it took the intervention of a stranger for him to realize what he was missing. "We are making adjustments to our routine," he replied simply. After leaving school, instead of returning to the office, Breno drove to Daniela's apartment. He needed to discuss the details of the charity event, but there was also something else he couldn't explain, an almost urgent need to see her again, to talk, to better understand this woman who had turned his life upside down. When Daniela opened the door, she looked like she had just arrived too. She was still wearing the clothes she wore to teach, and her hair was slightly messed up by the wind. "Breno, did something happen?" "No, nothing serious. I just wanted to talk about the event. I have some ideas and contacts we can use." Daniela invited him in, and soon they were sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, lists, and budgets. Breno was impressed by Daniela's meticulous organization, as she had planned every detail of the event, even without having guaranteed funding. Did you really believe you could accomplish all this alone? He asked in amazement. I had to believe, she replied simply. Those children were counting on me. I didn't have the luxury of doubt. As they discussed fundraising strategies, Breno noticed an envelope on the table, addressed to Lucas, in Daniela's elegant handwriting. What's this? He asked, indicating the envelope. Daniela blushed slightly. It's a letter to Lucas. I write to all my students from time to time. It helps strengthen the connection and encourage them. Can I see? Breno asked, driven by genuine curiosity. Daniela hesitated. These are personal words for Lucas. I don't know if... Please, he insisted. I want to better understand how... You connect with him in a way I never could. After a moment of thought, Daniela nodded and handed over the envelope. It was not meant to be read by anyone else, so I ask that you respect the privacy of these thoughts. Breno carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the handwritten letter. Dear Lucas, it's been 2 months since we started our classes together, and I want you to know how proud I am of you. Not only for your progress in math and science, which has been impressive, but especially for your generous heart and curious mind. When you asked me about the children at the community center, I saw something very special in your eyes. Empathy. You genuinely cared about people you had never met. You wanted to know how they lived, what they felt, how they learned without all the resources you had available. Know that true wealth is not measured by what we have, but by what we share. It is not measured by material possessions, but by human connections. Your father built an impressive empire, and one day you may inherit it all. But the most valuable legacy he can leave you is the example of how to use your privileges to make a difference in the lives of others. I hope that one day you will be able to meet the community center and the wonderful children we serve there. I am sure you would make friends quickly, because kindness recognizes kindness no matter where it comes from. Stay curious, stay kind, keep questioning the world around you, and always remember, knowledge is the only treasure that grows when it is shared. With love, Aunt Daniela. Breno felt a lump in his throat as he carefully folded the letter and returned it to the envelope. Daniela's words had touched something deep inside him, not just because of the obvious affection she showed for Lucas, but because of the underlying message about values, purpose, and legacy. Thank you for sharing this with me, he said, handing the envelope back. You really care about him? I care about all my students, Daniela replied. But Lucas is special. He has incredible potential not only for academic success, but to become someone who will make a difference in the world. If he has the right people by his side, Breno commented thoughtfully. Like his father, Daniela said, holding his gaze. He adores you, you know. He speaks of you with such pride. My father builds the tallest buildings in the capital. My father knows the mayor. My father works hard to give me everything I need. Breno smiled sadly. He says that, even though I'm so absent? Children have an incredible capacity to love unconditionally. What they really want is not expensive gifts or extravagant trips. It's time, attention, presence. The conversation was interrupted by Breno's cell phone ringing. It was his CFO, with an emergency at the office. For the first time in his career, Breno responded, You handle it. I trust your judgment. I'm busy with something important right now. When he hung up, he found Daniela looking at him with an expression that mixed surprise and approval. That was unexpected, she commented. I'm trying to reevaluate my priorities, Breno explained. Speaking of which, I made the transfer to the community center this morning, the amount we discussed plus an additional amount for the structural improvements you mentioned. Breno, that's... Daniela seemed speechless, her eyes suddenly watery. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Consider it the beginning of a partnership. I spoke to a few contacts today, and we have at least 3 major companies interested in sponsoring the charity event. With their reach, we can turn this into something much bigger than you originally planned. Daniela's enthusiasm was contagious as they discussed their new plans for the event. What was supposed to be a modest fundraiser now had the potential to become a milestone in raising funds for social projects. Breno surprised himself with his own engagement, offering ideas and solutions with the same enthusiasm he usually reserved for lucrative business ventures. When they finally said goodbye, it was already night. In the elevator, Breno realized that he had spent hours with Daniela without even checking his watch or worrying about unanswered emails. It was a strange and liberating feeling. In the weeks that followed, a subtle transformation began to occur in Breno's life. He rearranged his schedule so that he would be there when Lucas got home from school. He attended classes with Daniela, no longer as a suspicious observer, but as a father interested in his son's development. On Saturdays, they both regularly visited the community center, where Lucas had formed strong friendships and Breno, to his own surprise, had discovered a talent for mentoring teenagers interested in entrepreneurship. The charity event, now called Building Futures, grew far beyond initial expectations. With the support of Breno's contacts, they secured sponsorship from major companies and confirmed appearances from celebrities and influencers. What had started as a desperate attempt to save a community center on the brink of closure had turned into a movement to support educational projects in vulnerable communities throughout the capital. The day before the big day, Breno, Lucas, and Daniela were at the community center, finalizing the final preparations. The place was unrecognizable. With the funds advanced by the sponsors, they had carried out urgent renovations. The roof no longer leaked, the bathrooms were renovated, and the community kitchen now had equipment worthy of a professional restaurant. "I never imagined we would come this far," Daniela said, looking around with obvious emotion. 3 months ago, we were about to close our doors. "You would never have given up," Breno replied. "You would have found a way, even without my help." "Maybe, but it wouldn't be the same." She smiled, watching Lucas, who was playing with the other children. "You know what surprises me the most? Seeing how you've changed." "Me?" Breno feigned indignation. "Yeah, I'm still the same tough, relentless man I've always been." "Of course," Daniela laughed. "That's why I saw you yesterday helping little Miguel with his homework, with all the patience in the world. Or why you cancelled an international meeting to watch Lucas's presentation at school." Breno smiled, acknowledging the transformation. "Let's just say my priorities have changed." "And your business? Has it not suffered with this change?" "Surprisingly, no. I've found that delegating isn't as difficult as I thought it would be. My team is capable. They just needed the space to show it." He paused thoughtfully. "In fact, some of the social initiatives we've been implementing have actually generated positive publicity for the company. Our new social housing project on the east side has a huge waiting list." Social interest. The feared Breno Anderson. "Building affordable housing," Daniela teased with a mischievous smile. "With smaller profit margins but higher volume," he explained, pragmatic as ever, "and with the added satisfaction of knowing that we are actually meeting a real need in the city, not just creating more luxury condos for foreign investors." Daniela studied him for a moment. "You've really changed, Breno, and consequently, you've changed a lot of people's lives for the better." The next day, the Building Futures event was a resounding success. The large event hall of a luxury hotel in the center of the capital was packed. Businessmen, celebrities, politicians, and most importantly, representatives of disadvantaged communities from all over the city gathered to support the cause. Lucas and the children from the community center performed a musical number that drew enthusiastic applause from the audience. Daniela spoke passionately about the importance of education as a tool for social transformation. And to the surprise of many, Breno Anderson, known for his discretion and reserve, took the stage to announce not only a substantial donation, but also the creation of a permanent fund to support educational initiatives in vulnerable communities. "I've spent most of my life building buildings," he said into the microphone, his voice surprisingly emotional. "Now I understand that building people, building futures, is an infinitely more valuable investment." His eyes met Lucas's in the front row, next to Daniela. His son's proud smile was worth more than all the successful endeavors of his career. The end of the night, when the last guests were saying goodbye, Breno, Lucas, and Daniela gathered in a quiet corner of the hall. The fundraising had exceeded all expectations, enough to guarantee the operation of the community center for at least 2 years, in addition to making it possible to open a new unit in another needy community. "We did it, Aunt Daniela," Lucas exclaimed, jumping up and down with excitement. "Now the children will have new computers and more books, right?" "Yes, Lucas," she replied, stroking the boy's hair. "And this all started with you, you know? You were the one who first told your father about the center." Lucas looked at Breno with adoration. "Dad is amazing, isn't he? He gets everything he wants." Breno crouched down to be at his son's level. "No, champ, I only got what really matters. When I started listening to you and Aunt Daniela, you taught me what really matters." After putting Lucas to sleep in the car, exhausted after the long night of celebration, Breno and Daniela walked through the hotel garden, enjoying the rare moment of tranquility. "So what's next?" he asked. "With the center secured, with the new project underway, so what are your plans?" Daniela smiled, looking up at the stars that dotted the capital's sky, rarely visible through the smog of the metropolis. "Continue the work, reach more children, maybe expand to other communities as I've always dreamed." "What about us?" Breno asked, his voice softer than usual. Daniela stared at him, surprised by the direct question. "We?" "Yes, us. You, me, Lucas. These last few weeks have changed everything for me. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm on the right path, and you're a huge part of that." Daniela hesitated, clearly emotional but cautious. "Breno, we are from very different worlds." "We were," he corrected. "Now I'm not so sure. Or maybe the different worlds are exactly what we need. You to remind me of what really matters, me to help make your dreams of social change possible." "Are you offering me a business partnership?" she teased, but her eyes revealed that she understood perfectly what he was really proposing. "I'm offering much more than that," Breno replied, taking her hands in his. "I'm offering a journey together. I don't know exactly where it will take us, but I know I want to find out." Daniela smiled, squeezing Breno's hands lightly. "A journey together sounds good. One step at a time." "One step at a time," he agreed. Onaway, the horizon. The first rays of sunlight began to gild the city's skyscrapers. Their new day was dawning, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings, new constructions, not just of buildings but of dreams, of relationships, of more just and compassionate futures. Lucas, asleep in the car, clutched tightly the colorful bracelet his friend at the community center had taught him to make. On his serene face, a small smile, as if even in his dreams he knew that his family, now expanded to include not only his father, but also Daniela and all the children at the community center, had found a new purpose, a new direction. And Breno, the man who had built an empire of concrete and glass, discovered that his greatest and most valuable construction was just beginning. The construction of a life with meaning, of a legacy that transcended material goods, of a future where success was measured not by the floors of his skyscrapers, but by the height of the dreams he helped to realize. The afternoon sun lit up the newly opened garden of the Aurora Community Center. Where once there had been only a cracked concrete patio, there was now a green space with a community garden, a colorful playground, and a small central plaza where children of all ages gathered to read, play, and learn. It was almost impossible to recognize the place as the same center that a year earlier had been on the brink of closure. Breno watched the scene from the window of a renovated room, now transformed into a small office where he and Daniela coordinated the social projects that had multiplied after the success of the Building Futures event. What had begun as an initiative to save a single community center had transformed into a foundation that supported educational projects in several vulnerable communities in the capital. "I found you," Daniela said, entering the room with a folder of documents. "Lucas is looking everywhere. The science presentation is starting in 15 minutes. And he's nervous." Breno smiled. "Nervous?" He rehearsed that presentation at least 20 times. Even Galileo can explain the water cycle. "Still, he wants his dad to be in the front row," Daniela replied, leaning in for a quick kiss. It's important to him to have you around for important moments. And I wouldn't miss it for anything, Breno assured, putting away his laptop. He looked out the window one last time, watching as Lucas, now 9, organized the other children for the science presentation they had prepared together. His son was so different, more confident, happier, more connected to the world around him. Over the past few months, Breno and Daniela's relationship had evolved naturally. What had begun as a professional partnership to save the community center had turned into a deep friendship, and eventually a romantic relationship that surprised both of them by how naturally it had developed. Daniela now spent more time at Breno and Lucas's apartment, although she maintained her own place in Santana, so as not to lose touch with reality, as she said, half jokingly, half seriously. Together, they walked to the courtyard where about 50 children had gathered in a semicircle for the presentation. Mrs. Ingrid, now officially the administrative director of the center, was seating the visitors, parents, volunteers, and representatives of sponsoring companies who had come to learn about the work being done there. "Hello, Mr. Anderson," greeted Carlos, a 15-year-old who had been one of Daniela's first students at the center. "I just got the news. I passed the first round of the internship selection process at your company." "Excellent, Carlos," Breno replied, genuinely happy. The internship program for young people from vulnerable communities had been one of his first initiatives after getting involved with the community center. "I knew you could do it. Your irrigation system design for the community garden shows exactly the kind of innovative thinking we're looking for." The young man's face lit up at the compliment. For Breno, these moments had become much more rewarding than closing million-dollar deals. Seeing the direct impact his actions had on the lives of these young people brought a satisfaction that no contract or acquisition had ever provided. The presentation began with Lucas taking the center of the semicircle, confidently explaining the project they had developed, a rainwater harvesting system that now supplied water to the entire community garden. Breno watched with pride as his son effortlessly alternated between technical explanations and interactions with the audience, encouraging questions and engaging everyone in the learning. "He has a natural talent for teaching," he commented quietly to Daniela. "Just like you." "And the determination to accomplish great projects," she replied, "just like his father." After the presentation, while the children received enthusiastic applause from the audience, Daniela pulled Breno to a quieter corner of the garden. "I need to tell you something," she said, her expression hard to read. "I've received a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" Breno asked, suddenly apprehensive. "The Municipal Department of Education. They want me to coordinate a program to implement our methodology in public schools in vulnerable areas of the city." Breno felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. "That's incredible, Daniela. Your work being recognized at the municipal level, it's everything you've ever dreamed of." "Yes, but," she hesitated, "it would mean less time here at the center, less time with you and Lucas." Breno took her hands in his. "When we first met, you taught me to see beyond my own world. Now it's my turn to remind you your mission has always been to reach as many children as possible with life-changing education. This is your chance." "What about us?" she asked, her eyes revealing the same vulnerability that Breno rarely allowed himself to show. "We?" he smiled. "We're stronger together, remember? One step at a time." Their conversation was interrupted by Lucas, who ran up to them with his eyes shining with excitement. "Dad, Aunt Daniela, did you see? Everyone loved our performance. The newspaper reporter even took pictures." "We did, champ," Breno replied, hugging his son. "You were amazing." "And Maria explained everything about the water cycle better than the teacher at school," exclaimed Lucas, referring to his friend from the community center. "Can we install this water collection system in the new condominium you're building, Dad? Aunt Daniela said it would save a lot of water and help the environment." Breno exchanged a knowing look with Daniela. "You know what? That's an excellent idea. I'll talk to the architecture team on Monday." While Lucas ran back to his friends, Breno and Daniela walked through the garden, observing the transformations not only of the physical space, but of the people who frequented it. If someone had told me a year ago that I would be here, helping to coordinate social projects, dating a former activist lawyer, and considering implementing sustainability systems in my businesses at the suggestion of my 9-year-old son, commented Breno, laughing at the improbability of it all. Life has its surprises, Daniela replied. But you know what doesn't surprise me? Seeing how you adapted to all of this so naturally, I think this was always your place, Breno. You just needed to find the way. In the distance, the sun was beginning to set, casting golden hues over the community center. Children ran, laughed, learned. Volunteers shared knowledge and affection. Parents who had barely had time for their own families were now actively participating in the community. And at the center of it all, a boy who had once felt lonely in his luxury apartment was now flourishing, surrounded by friends from different social backgrounds, bridging worlds that had previously seemed irreconcilable. You know what I was thinking, Breno commented as they watched Lucas teaching a group of younger children how to plant lettuce seedlings in the vegetable garden. That plot of land we bought in the main garden. What's wrong with him? Daniela asked, curious. What if, instead of building yet another luxury condominium, we developed a mixed-use project? Quality affordable housing, commercial spaces for small local entrepreneurs and a community center inspired by Estrella da Mancha. Daniela's face lit up. Are you serious? I've never been so serious in my life, Breno replied. Lucas made me realize something important. The legacy I want to leave is not a collection of luxury buildings, but a more just and humane city for him to grow up in. Daniela squeezed his hand, her eyes brimming with emotion. Words were unnecessary. They both knew they were on the right path, a path they had found together, one step at a time, transforming not only their own lives, but also the reality around them. That night, as they drove home, the three of them together like the family they had become, Lucas fell asleep in the back seat of the car, exhausted but happy after a day of accomplishments. Breno adjusted the rear-view mirror to look at his son and met Daniela's gaze. One step at a time? She asked, smiling. One step at a time, Breno confirmed, but always together. The more you comment and share, the more we can bring you stories that touch your heart. Leave your name in the comments and we may include you in one of our next stories with a special greeting just for you.